everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Amanda Ziadeh with WashingtonExec, and with me today to talk about free market intelligence is Lisa Shea Mundt, co-founder of the Pulse of Government Contracting. Thank you for joining me today, Lisa.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Of course. So can you start by explaining what market intelligence is as it relates to GovCon opportunities?
Absolutely. So market intelligence is a funny thing because it can refer to any data point that can better inform your company's ability to capture a federal contract. So market intelligence can be upcoming opportunities, potential competitors, or even events. You can use events as market intelligence because there are so many components to winning federal business and to be competitive in a hugely saturated market. So to government contractors, any piece of intel, and that's intel with a lowercase I, counts.
All right. Well, thank you. So how are contractors currently getting this intelligence? And how do commercial systems help?
Yeah, so every company is different. One of the cool things about what we do as consultants is we've gotten to work with a variety of different types of contractors. And so this is not just information technology, right? We're working the construction side, we're working the product side. So there's so many different types of companies in terms of capabilities and also size. So each company really is different. Some rely primarily on relationships and word of mouth. Others find contracts for bid in the proposal phase and win just based on sheer dumb luck. I'm going to be honest. But most of us in industry are very, very intentional about contract capture. And it typically begins with a BD analyst surveying opportunities. It consists of companies expending resources, looking for clues on how recompetes are going to come back out based on things like funding levels and periods of performance in FPDS. And yes, you mentioned commercial systems. Most companies do pay exorbitant fees for licenses to commercial systems that aggregate data and overlay custom logic and premier UI UX. And so now if you're saying, well, Lisa, what do you mean they're aggregating data? If there's data for free, why do these systems exist? We could talk about this. I could get on my soapbox forever and a day. But what it comes down to at its core is there are so many issues with publicly available US procurement data that the companies out there on the commercial side capitalize on confusion. And who can blame them? I mean, really, we've talked about this as the Pulse. You might say, oh, well, there's a singular source of contract information. It's called sam.gov. Lisa, haven't you heard of it? Of course I have. And that's not the case. There's not a singular source of contract information. The Pulse actually clocked it at over 90 .gov sources. So that means these are websites by the government that have contract information or market intelligence or just data that you can leverage on them. And I mean, we can go through this in a little bit, but just in terms of actual contracts too, if I'm not talking about the competitive intel, if I'm not talking about the cost or the spend data or anything like that, even contractually, there's things like sam.gov, obviously, but then there's grants.gov, which, yes, are grants, but are still federal grants. They are funded differently than, say, the typical federal contract, or things like challenge.gov that aren't massive contracts the way that you would normally go through with SAM, but are still good points of entry to a new customer base. And then from there too, there's things like all of the individual agency forecasts. So depending on what agency you're looking for, you'd go to their website and look at their forecast to find out what types of contracts are going to be coming out. And just so many other sources out there too that it can get overwhelming. And that's how commercial systems help, because they're able to automate that aggregation.
Makes sense. I mean, who has time to sift through all of those websites to look for opportunities?
Yeah.
Makes sense. So tell us how contractors can find market intelligence for free and where the Pulse comes in.
Right. So this idea of you need to pay for market intelligence, we think, is one of the biggest lies in government contracting, because commercial systems and even consulting firms. And look, we're a consulting firm. Anybody that says they're not selling you something is lying, right? Like you say, who has time to go through these systems? We do. That's part of what we do as our consulting, and people pay us for. But what we don't want you to believe is that this information that we're pulling is shrouded in mystery or otherwise unattainable outside of a paywall or our expertise. At the Pulse, we always talk about being very teach a man to fish. We'll tell you where the information is coming from. We're not trying to keep it secret, and we're not acting like we're making this up. We always add our sort of level of analysis on it too, but otherwise, when it's just a pure data standpoint, we say this is the source material. And so the origin of this intelligence is free. You just need to know where to look for it. And so we really come in to help guide contractors to these sources. And that's especially true through our membership platform, what we call the Insider. And what we do is we pull from all these disparate sources, and then we also link out to those sources too. So, you can find market intelligence for free if you're clever. And I know that we can talk about that in a little bit, but what I would say that we really come into play is this guidance. We can say, hey, this is your customer base. This is what you're looking to gather. Here's where you can look to find it.
Got it. So give us some examples. Where can contractors find these tools?
Wonderful. So we actually, for some of our trainings, we have very long lists, right? But just some sort of standard ones that you can look to for that, besides what I've already mentioned. There's things like the Contract Awarded Labor Category, or CALC, which is a pricing tool that helps federal contracting officers and government contractors find awarded prices to use in negotiations for labor contracts. So you can find things like ceiling prices, fully burdened costs, service data, and worldwide rates. There's a similar tool through GSA, and there's a couple others that come out like this every once in a while. Now, other sort of creative ways that you can find market intelligence that isn't so obvious on its face is if you actually go to the GAO website, so like the Government Accountability Office, you can use material to connect areas for where they list federal efficiencies and improvements, and try to figure out, like, through context, where your federal customers are being told from this larger body where they need to do better. And if you know where they're being told where they need to do better, then you can use that and say, okay, here's how I can tell them how I can support them in those improvements. You can explore the bid protest decisions through GAO to understand how agencies evaluate their proposals, and you can learn from your competitors' mistakes. When people on LinkedIn post about GAO protests, I don't think they're doing it to be nasty. They're doing it, some of them are kind of funny, but others is really a learning opportunity. You can see where people went wrong, and you can make sure that you don't take that same path. And so these decisions really prove as a great place to gather competitive intelligence, not only on external vendors, but also on yourself if you're ever the subject of a GAO protest. Now, even further than that, there's things like budget and performance documentation, because each agency includes budget and performance documentation as well as strategic plans on their website. And now, look, the Google machine is a great source of information. And if you really have the patience, you can dive into the depths of Google, because it's not going to be front page material that you're looking for, right? It's going to be buried. We all know about things like search engine optimization and sponsored ads and all that. So if you're really looking, you're going to be looking a couple pages deep. But if you go to your customer agency's website, this is going to sound so obvious, people are going to throw themselves out of their chairs. If you go on your customer agency's website and you just use the search bar to look for things like strategic plans or organizational charts, it's going to pop up better there than it is if you Google it just through the Google machine. And I know I'm being flippant and cute with that, but it's because especially for like our generation, it seems so obvious, right? Like if you don't know it, look it up. So definitely looking through those websites. And then, of course, budgetary documents can help gather intelligence on where your agency of choice would like to spend their money and where they believe their agency is heading. So, knowing what the sort of line items are and what money is being earmarked for what initiatives, that in itself is market intelligence. And one of our also favorite ones to bring up, especially when it comes to competitive intelligence, is to investigate industry job postings. Because, if you look at your competitors' websites and you are looking at the kind of jobs that your competitors are looking to fill, then, and you have Google alerts to monitor free job boards like USA Jobs or LinkedIn Jobs and, PSC postings, this monitoring could lead to a potential opportunity because you could fill a vacancy on an active contract or gather intelligence on who is buying from your competitors. So like if you're working a proposal, let's use a real world example, and there is a specific labor category that you need to fill. And you take that labor category and you put in the agency and that labor category just in Google and see what pops up. And a job posting pops up from your competitor because they're trying to fill the billet too. And maybe they've even copy and pasted the requirements from the proposal. Now you know for sure they're going after the same bid as you. So there's 1,000 pieces of moving parts when it comes to market intelligence. And so what I'm trying to get at is be creative in where you can find this kind of information.
Awesome. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for these tips and tricks. This will resonate greatly with our audience, especially, the GovCon sector. So free advice. This is some free tips from Lisa here. So thank you so much. Appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Cool. All right. Take care.
You too.